All right, ready to do the real thing?
That's great, yeah.
Perfect. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is a 15-Minute Friday where myself and a returning guest, we sit down one more time, but this time we're talking about a specific topic or subject with the goal and the hope of maybe sending you into your weekend or your upcoming week with some potentially positive, actionable, thought-provoking advice and opinion. Joining me once again on this episode, my friend Adam Lehman. Welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here.
I got the show name right this time,
Nailed it.
and if you're only checking out this episode, you have no idea what that's in reference to, and that's great because I know that this is the What You Don't Hear podcast, and I never am ever confused. So I'm going to go ahead and start our clock. Adam, in this episode, we are going to cover the topic of personal and professional boundaries and what all goes into that, how it can get blurry sometimes, what that balance looks like. So you brought this one up. You wanted to talk about it. When we're talking about professional and personal boundaries, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so I think I've got a unique history. I grew up on a family farm where everybody worked. My grandpa had a factory that a lot of my family worked at. My aunt and uncle had a restaurant. It was my first job that was not at my family's farm. Was at my aunt and uncle's restaurant where many of my family also worked. And then I 10 years ago started a business with my wife and have started businesses with friends, with really close friends. And in all of that, working with people that you care about beyond just work is an interesting dynamic that sometimes relationships transcend just being coworkers, where we have a professional relationship with one another, but then also I'll see you Thursday night, I'll see you Thursday night and Friday night, and then Saturday during the day, and then you're coming to my baseball game, and then, so there's just a lot of overlap, which I think has given me a sensitivity to work relationships, maybe a hypersensitivity to work relationships sometimes, about how we treat people, how things end well or poorly. And then I think the other thing that's a bit unique about me is my work has sort of planted me in working with a lot of creatives and with a lot of small business owners many of whom aren't starting a business because they put together a business plan and they figured out that they would ROI 40% in their first year. It wasn't because the profit margins were awesome. Isn't why they started doing something. They started doing something because they felt compelled to. They cared. And so there's this boundary that even comes with your work as an artist, as a creative person, where you're like, I really care about this, but also once it's made and out there, it might be critiqued, it might be judged, people might say things about it. And we need to sort of have some type of boundary with even the relationship to our craft and what that is and what we get from it, what we expect out of it. And I think it's a type of topic that people oversimplify, and which is why I was excited to get to talk about it in my coaching relationships with people. With my coaching clients, it's one of the things that comes up most frequently. People say different things like, oh, my ego is getting in the way. I was like, I think you care about how this is done. If you're a creative person, you might be hired specifically because of you care. People trust you to care about how it's done, and they like the style in which you do it. So they would like to hire you to make things in the way that you've made things in the past because you've cared. And I just think most people kind of get thrown off by that. I watch people get really thrown off by criticism, or get really thrown off. I myself have been really thrown off by struggle when relationships are hard, but we care about them and we work together. Or when I take a project really personally. I'm very personally invested, maybe too much, but it's kind of just how I like to do stuff. I like to care a lot about the stuff that I do.
Of course. Yeah.
And so I think in all of that, what I found is that people really, really struggle with when things get hard. When things are good, it's easy. It's the best. Working with your friends, working with my spouse, partner, working with family, working with friends is awesome when we work together, work hard during the day, do cool stuff, And the same people I go get happy hour with are already at the office with me. And so we're like, let's just go to happy hour now. It's easy, or, we're already doing those things together. It can make a lot of sense. I recently have heard a person call family businesses or creative businesses like that, where someone's really passionate, they call it high risk, high reward. And I think we see a lot of examples of the high reward where somebody does it really well. A husband and wife start a business and make something of it, and their skills and collaboration plays off each other really well, or somebody in their cousin and brother or sister or mom or something start something together, and their shared interests and their history of decades of knowing each other and communicating and relationship makes everything better, accelerates how fast they can be successful, accelerates trust, accelerates the ability to hey, I'm somebody called off, can you come cover for them because I have to go cover for and that stuff is a bit more common amongst tighter relationships where the relationship transcends work. And when you have just a professional relationship, those things are almost inappropriate, where you'd be like, I don't really expect my coworkers to pull me into all their stuff, right? So there's a high reward. Those things can go really well. They can also go really poorly. And I think the high risk gets mistaken a lot. And then when it becomes hard, that's, I think, where the issue is. And so when I'm working with people, I always bring up 3 different things. And we sort of really tease apart what these relationships mean and the boundaries that need to exist with them. The first thing we'll always talk about is, and this seems silly, but knowing yourself, knowing what's really important to you, and boiling down what's important to you to a single graspable concept. And so for us in our business, when I'm working on a project for a client, or I'm working on something, I usually care a lot about some particular thing, either how our work is going to make a bigger difference for that client, or how I've watched that client over the last decade build their business, and how I want to make sure that they keep getting taken care of the same way we took care of them 10 years ago. And it gets furthered. I want to make sure but I care about something really, really specific. And as I get aware of that, and this is what I try to help my clients do, is to get aware of what they actually deeply care about and say that out loud to everybody, and to be intentional, to declare your intent or your interest in a particular collaboration. So a good example of this is I've worked with many family members in various ways in the past. And sometimes you work with family members, or they work with me, because it's really easy to ask me for something. It's very normal to send me a text and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. Can you do it? And something I might send an invoice for $450 for, I will just handle for a family member or a close friend quickly. And I've learned in those things to be to state my own interests in why I'm doing that. To be like, oh, I love this. Or I'll often talk with family members, I call it the pool principle. If you have a pool, I'm really likely to get invited to swim in it. So if my work for you puts a pool in your backyard, I'll get a swim there.
Right.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm into that. And so I don't really care about sending invoices when, if this could help you and I get to swim in your pool, we're all on the same team. Mm-hmm. We're the same, we're sharing the same diving board. So we should be good.
Right.
At the same time, I just think a lot of folks don't. I've just had a lot of experience where I've had to do that, or things have been challenging, or you find yourself confused. And so I think knowing yourself and what you actually really care about, whether it's caring about your work, why do I care about helping this small business? I was because I live in the city of Columbus, and if these businesses don't be sustained, I'll want to move. I won't like living here if there's not places like this around. So I want to help, and I have an interest in that. Sometimes people are like, you've been helping a lot. Why are you doing this? You've been helping beyond what you're billing. And there's some businesses that I jump in extra with. And I'm like, because I got to live here. I like the stuff you're doing to exist. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I care about. And so if they're making decisions that are hurting their sustainability or making them lame and I don't want to go to them, I will say something because
Right.
I want to keep coming here. I want to live in a city that has them or places like that present. And so naming your interests, I think, is a really big one. I think that the second piece of it, and has more to do with the relational thing, is listening to the interests of another person, not dictating what you think another person wants or what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And in coaching relationships or even professional relationships, I've hired friends or family members or acquaintances or people I've known, and I might have a dream for their career that's like, oh, you could work here and it will work like this and it will end up like this. And that might not be what they want to do, you know?
Yeah. It's projecting your own wants
Yeah.
and needs, assuming, and not to interject, but like I have been guilty of this in the past working with friends on projects, is like I would be under the assumption of, since they were in this with me, we must want the same thing. Our why must be the same. Our intentions must be the same. What you want must be what I want because you said yes to doing this, right? And often like it took some lessons learned of like, oh wait, like even though yes they're down, they also need to get better at projecting their actual intentions. But if we're not listening, we then in turn can then project our wants and needs onto someone else very easily because they're there with us. And you're like, you're here with me, you must want it too, right?
Yeah. The human brain is really good at projecting. It's like amazing at it. And whether you're an artist or a creative and you care about the thing you're doing, and you're like, people only like this because of I do it this particular way. I've learned in caring a lot about the things that I do, the way that I do them, that when I bring in another teammate and I train them up and they do things very differently than me, that clients are happy. People like the work. People are like, this is really good, even if it's different than how I would do it. Even if it is radically different, then even if I would have said it's wrong, people can like it. And so sometimes we aren't even that good of, we're not even always great at understanding why the thing that we do is liked by other people. And so I think having that changing the relationship about why we create things, listening to what other people have to say, understanding that we might like doing something or just care about it. And it's okay to care about how something is done that you're doing. But it doesn't mean that's why everyone likes it. And the same thing is true, I think, in the collaborations and how pulling other people, working with them, collaborating with them, doing projects together, starting businesses together, becoming partners together. Not everybody has the same path. And then even if people have the same path for a little bit, you change your mind a little bit. 10 years ago, my mission statement was, I just like doing whatever I like doing.
Yeah.
That was what was fun to me. One of our very first financial advisors or people who came into our business to kind of coach us was like, what's the mission statement of this? And I was like, that we get to do whatever we feel like doing in a creative and fun way, which is cool and awesome. And 10 years later, that is not that's not the mission. It's a really hard mission to recruit other people into. That's not that exciting for them. And it's not that great of an experience for our customers or the people who pay us to be at the whims of what we feel like doing.
Right,
it's
right.
It's a very creative expression, but also I don't have to run a business to do that. I can also just do whatever I feel like doing, not at work.
Yeah.
It took me a while to understand that and to separate that out, and which is why I think these personal professional boundaries are a really big deal.
Now, just so I want to make sure that we get it in before the time runs out. The third, you said you had the three main points.
Yeah.
Is that
Money?
Yeah.
That's it. Is understanding that in a professional, it's personal professional boundaries. Money matters a lot, and you and I could agree to do something together. And if you would hope that it turns into $1 million thing, and I would hope that I have fun.
Yeah.
We can both agree to have fun together for a small amount of time. And then at some point, I'm going to want to buy a different house or put new cars on my tire, in which case I haven't found a place that I can trade the fun times I'm having for new tires on my car. And I think professionally, sometimes I think people just forget that that's going on, that the money part of it matters a lot. I watch a lot of people who are like, I want to employ people, I want to be in a great place to work, I want to treat people well, I want to treat people like humans. And then they'll also say things like, I would also like to provide health insurance for the employees at our company. And I'm like, health insurance is just, it costs money.
Right, yeah,
Yeah. And so that stuff has to work out. And if it doesn't work out, are you still going to be like, are we still going to show up together from 9 to 5
right
on a Tuesday? Am I still going to ask you to? Or if you wouldn't work out and somebody else would work out, if they were sitting in your chair, would I swap? Would we trade things? And so I just think understanding and being clear about those, I say them boundaries, because boundaries can be ways to keep things, boundaries are tools that we can use to help keep distance between things, but they're also on-ramps to be like, if you like this, if you like this, if you like this, this is what I care about. Would you like to do the thing I care about together?
Right. Guidelines, right?
Yeah. And then you can jump into them with full force. You can actually make the relationship a lot stronger when there's healthy boundaries around. Every therapist is like, yeah, duh, we know that. And I've tried to get everyone to understand it. But when we care about the people we work with and when we care about the work that we're doing, we have to be extra careful. And there's not a lot of, you go on Instagram and you're just going to find a bunch of people who are like, believe in yourself, do what you love, treat your employees well. I went looking for the great example of this is resources on accountability for people that you manage. So like say you manage people, they report to you, and you want to have accountability. So like if you're supposed to do this job and you're doing this job poorly, what do we do? And you find that, and if you say, okay, so what if they keep not doing a good job? Like, well, you need to put together a development program. You need to walk them through this process, all these other steps. I'm like, at some point you change the relationship to we don't work together anymore. At some point you got to do that. And if you go try to find resources about where's that line, it's really hard to find. And people give you all sorts of different advice. And it's hard even when you don't really care about the people you work with. And it's hard when you don't even really care about the work in the way that a lot of creative or people who are just doing their own thing care about it. So it's such an important topic. It's something that is worth people spending 10 times as much time and energy and thinking about it than I think they often give themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sure we could do probably even more 15-Minute Fridays just on this subject. We, of course, with the most of these episodes, you just sort of scratch the surface on the topic. But before we wrap this one up, if there are like 5, not even 5, just like a handful, whatever it is, a list, whatever you want to do, what's like your hit list of go-tos, of just like quick fire off of like big like thought points or tips that you would want to leave somebody with of like, hey, when it comes to setting this blend of personal and professional boundaries, what are the immediate go-tos to think about?
State your interest. Why are you interested in this thing? Change your mind and announce that you're changing your mind, that you were used to care about something and now that has changed and you care about something else now. You're allowed to grow and mature as a human being, and so are other parties. There's a book called Crucial Conversations that outlines a pattern of how to have hard conversations with people. It uses the framework CPR, circumstance, pattern, relationship. Read that book, but talk about the circumstances and say this is a circumstantial thing. It's not a pattern. Once of those patterns start to happen in the actions, say this seems like a pattern, we should work to change that. Because if we don't, the relationship will have to change. And then after you've talked about that, like the relationship needs to change because this pattern keeps happening. It's like Crucial Conversations is an amazing book that gives a great framework for all of that. When you're working with people that you really care about, especially if they're family and they're part of your pool, plan, if they succeed and have a pool, you're more likely to swim in it, and vice versa. You should, instead of thinking about how you could work together, spend some time together thinking about all of the ways that it will work poorly and be terrible, and talk about those together so that you can outline those and really work to make sure that they don't happen. Because that person might not work there, and they still might have a pool someday, and you're still going to have to go swim in it, or you'll get invited to. And then I think the fifth one is go to therapy and get to know yourself really well, or examine yourself, whatever therapy needs to be for you. Hire a coach, hire a person, examine yourself so that you're not projecting out onto everybody else that you work with, and you're not just, all of your defects aren't spilling all over the people who, in an unaware way, spilling all over the people that you work with.
Right. Perfect. I love it. Adam, where can people find you and all that you do around the internet.com?
You can visit, where should people visit? I don't even know. Visit thewonderjam.com, and all the stuff that I do is there.
It's all there. You'll find the links. And if not, I link everything in the show notes anyway. Yeah. So you can just scroll down a little bit on whatever app you're listening to this on. It's all right there. Adam, thank you so much, dude. We did it.